So today I want to show you how to code a basic website which can talk to Stable Diffusion and generate images with it. This website is super basic and it's more like a starting point for more complicated projects, but then you already know how it works. The tutorial is a little bit for beginners, so sometimes I explain things 3, 4, or 5 times because I think some things are just easier to understand when they're explained a little bit deeper. But yeah, anyway, so the thing is, this is the website and we can say monkey on acid in a roller coaster. We hit generate image, and in a folder we will soon get, he's tripping, so let's see. Well, that's the idea. We make a website where you can talk to Stable Diffusion, and then I will explain you how everything works. First thing we need to do is to install Stable Diffusion on your computer. And we do this now on a Windows computer, but it should be the same on a Mac computer. You go on, what you do, you go to Google, then you Google Stable Diffusion Web UI. And then here at the top is the first thing, Stable Diffusion Web UI, that's what you need. And then you either download the zip and save it on your computer, or you clone it via GitHub. This is of course for super basic beginners, so maybe you don't know what GitHub is. GitHub, well, you install it on your computer and then you can download files from GitHub easily, or you can collaborate, or you can do, well, that's not the GitHub course. Anyway, let's assume you have GitHub, then you can download it here via GitHub, or you just open the zip file. Anyway, we do it via GitHub now. So I go to any folder in my computer. It can be the desktop folder, it can be a folder on your hard drive, it doesn't really matter. Let's go to the desktop for now. And I make a right click, I go to open terminal and I write git clone, and then I put in this path. Then I press enter, and now it is downloading Stable Diffusion on my computer. As you see, it's here. Here's a new folder, and when I click in it, there's a lot of stuff in it. So that's step 1. That's good. Now we need a model. Like, we need to have an image model, and we download this from a website called Civit AI, but you can download it from other websites as well, but that's a funny one. That's a pretty good one. It has a lot of models, and we're looking for the model Juggernaut XL. That's the one. That's a pretty good model. We download it, and now it gets downloaded to my computer. Can I stop doing code? Okay, so we now have the model in the download folder. It's here, and we copy it and then we go to our new Stable Diffusion folder on the desktop or wherever it is, and then we go to the folder Models and the folder Stable Diffusion. And here we copy and paste, so here we paste the model inside, and that's good. Now we need to do a little bit of settings, which is not important for now to do a test, but we need it anyway. So we go down into the Stable Diffusion folder, to the main folder. We scroll down until we see a file called Web UI User. We right click on it and we open it in the Notepad or wherever you want to open it. Here in this file we need to write something, and I just copy and paste it from another file I prepared. Okay. Oops. Okay. So here we go. In this file, the Web UI -user, we write -API, -allow code, and -xformers. This is what we write. Then we save the file, we close it, and now we double click on it. Now a window pops up, like a command line interface. And now it's downloading some stuff from the internet, and it will probably take, if you do it the very first time, it takes quite a while, maybe even 5 to 10 minutes or something. So we just come back once this is finished. Okay, that worked. If it worked, this thing popped up. If it didn't work, you would have errors in this thing. One thing to note, I kind of got to tell, but you need Python to have it Python installed on your computer. And if you don't know how to do that, well, there are tutorials. This is not the tutorial how to install Stable Diffusion. If it doesn't work how to install Stable Diffusion on your computer, you better check another tutorial. There are hundreds of tutorials online on YouTube how to install Stable Diffusion on your computer. This was just like a super basic introduction about it. So here on the top we can select our model. That's the model which we downloaded, and it's XL model. So here we can put a good resolution, 1024, that's the one which we want. And then we say we want a tiger in jungle. So generate. And we have our tiger, space station, tiger in the space station. So we have Stable Diffusion in a retro 70s space station. So here we have the proof. A big tiger. We have the proof Stable Diffusion is running. Vintage look. Cool, huh? So we have our Stable Diffusion running. That's a chapter we can close now. So now I prepared a basic setup of how you can control Stable Diffusion via API and a React website with NodeJS as well. So all sounds pretty complicated, but once you're in it, it's not that complicated anymore. First, you need to install NodeJS on your computer, because that's basically allowing you to run JavaScript on your computer. You need this anyway, and then you need to install npm on your computer, I assume, and then you should be all good. Where can you install npm? np install. Well, there are tutorials of how to install npm. You see here. So first you install Node, then you install npm, and if you run into problems about this, there are tutorials. Much more important is, so we have our stable diffusion running. Let's make another test. Let's make a monkey. Good, we have our monkey. And now we go again to GitHub. And there I just created a new project called Stable Diffusion API Node.js. That's the one. So this thing you will install on your computer. So I have it already installed. I delete it again because I install it again. So that's the same thing. You go to a terminal, you type in git clone. Already now it makes sense to install Git on your computer. If you don't know how to do that, there are tutorials. You see, now it's here. Here is my Stable Diffusion API Node.js thing. And I open it. And here are two folders. One folder is called Client. That's basically the website where input form and the button. And the server is actually the thing which makes the connection to Stable Diffusion. And that's also if you want to make the program more complex in the future, like integrating ChatGPT or other things. That's what's happening here. There is a git ignore file, which you can ignore. And there's a readme file where I'll put maybe some more information. And there is this file. It's a visual code file. So if I click on it, it opens visual code and it opens visual code, and it already has both folders inside. You know, instead of dragging that folder into visual code, you can just click on this file and you have the client file and the server file. Good. So first thing we do, we open a new terminal in visual code for the server, and we open a new terminal for the client. It's the same terminals like here. You could also do this, but the cool thing is we are already in the right folder. So this terminal is talking to the client, to the website, and this terminal is talking to the server. So, I mean, we can have a look inside of those folders, but what we can do first is we can install everything, because there's a lot of, install here, install. There are some libraries and some files which you didn't download, because sometimes they get updated. So that's what you do first. You install or you download the files which are required. That's a normal thing to do. You basically, our tools, they need other files from the internet, and when you write npm install, it downloads those tools and then they are integrated. If you wouldn't install, then there would be something missing. Anyway, we did it both and we got no errors. That's pretty good. And now let's go on the server. And here we write npm start. Alright, it says server is running on localhost 4000. I hope this is going for you. And if it's all well, it's good. And here we write npm start as well. No, here we write npm run dev. That's always a good one, npm run dev, which is the same, but for the client we need to write npm run dev, and for the server we need to write npm start. So now we go on our website browser and we type in localhost 3000 and we see a super minimal interface. Enter a prompt for the image, you write something here and then it comes here. And well, that's the client. That's basically what we see here is a website. And this is all happening in this folder. So inside there is, I will go into this in a bit, there is all the stuff which you see here. The server, you can't see it. It's like running in the background, you know? And I just go through both things. I want to show you what it does. So here I write tiger in a desert. Generate image. And now stable diffusion should create me a tiger in a desert. Shit. Okay, let's have a look. I have a look what's going on. Okay, here's my tiger in the desert. I can explain you what the problem was. So I was running stable diffusion, and when you look into the stable diffusion folder, there are, you know, you need to click on the web UI user file. And I clicked only on the web UI file, but you need to click on the web UI user file because the web UI user file includes that we are allowed to use stable diffusion via API. So I clicked on that, I opened stable diffusion with this one, and that's why there was no access to the API. So I do it again, I open stable diffusion via the user file. UI user. You see it's happening. Stable diffusion is opening, but we don't need it. I will close everything here. And now we write tiger in a city. We hit generate. We see stable diffusion is doing something. And now we have our tiger in the city. So it's working. If it doesn't work for you, either you probably did a mistake. You know, you either didn't install stable diffusion correctly, you didn't put the API into the web user, you install npm to run the server or the Node.js, but it's actually really working, which is good. Because I just built the thing this morning and I'm a bit proud that just after 1 hour I can show you the working thing. So I want to show you how this works. So that's cool, right? That's the idea. You have a website, you can say a lion with a monkey in a city. You hit the button and you get your image. There we go. I mean, this is super basic. The idea is to have a basic setup and then you can still build on top, right? There's nothing or not a lot unnecessary stuff happening. So let's have a look what's actually happening. The heart of the tool is the server. That's the thing which is running on NodeJS. It's a NodeJS server. You don't really have a user interface, you don't see it, it's like in your computer and yeah, it's like hidden, you know. So, and let's have a look at all those things. Let's start with this package. This is a beginner course. So package JSON, you don't need to do anything here at the moment, maybe later. Package JSON is a file where you see all the information about the project. The project is called server, it's version 1, it could have a description. The most important file is the server MJS file. You can start it by writing npm start. That's why it's here. And it has some dependencies. Dependencies are the things from the internet which it needs to download. That's what we did in the beginning, the npm install. So it installs those dependencies. That's the package JSON. The package -log.json is, I don't really understand how that file is. It's kind of a log, or it's kind of, it's not an important file for you, you know? Just ignore that file. It's connected to this file and you can completely never touch this file and you are happy. There is a folder called node modules. This folder is also not at all interesting for you. This is a folder which contains the things you downloaded. This folder gets managed automatically. You don't need to touch it, just don't delete it. And if you delete it, then you need to write npm install and it downloads it again from the internet and everything is here. So also already now you have 3 files which you don't really need to worry about, you know, that's pretty cool. Here is another folder, images, which kind of shows you all the images we just created. That's also not a complicated folder. You know, already 4 things which are not complicated. Pretty good. Here is a folder which contains a file, and here is also those 2 files. They are a bit complicated, and we are looking into it. No. Okay. So. The server, that's the main file, you know, that's basically when you start your server, that file starts. Let's look at the top. At the top we have, it imports 3 things. It imports that express thing and it imports course. Express, I don't know. It's here, it's ChatGPT told me to put it in and I did and it works. And course, I mean, you can Google what it means, right? And I can Google that as well. But until now, I did not need to know what Express really does. The course is important so it can talk later with your website. The website which you see here in the background, that's kind of, but also it's just importing this. This is not really important. Interesting is it imports another file. It imports this file, the generate image, it imports it. So we can use it, you know. If we would not import it, that file would just lie here and do nothing, but we want to use something from this file, so we're importing it. Alright, Then here it's the Express thing, which we don't need to take care about. Here it's the course, it's also connected to this. We don't need to care about this, and also here we don't need to care about this. If we delete it, it breaks, and if we don't touch it, it's good. This one is interesting. This is port 4000. So actually, the server has a website. You can, here, localhost 4000. Localhost 4000. We need to run the server, npm start. Here, I mean, that's the website of the server. There is just an error, basically, because we are not using the server to control anything. We're using an extra website for it. So, yes, you can open the server with localhost 4000, which is here. The server is running on localhost 4000. So if you put this in, you get it, but you don't need it. Okay, we talked about this. This here is interesting. But first, let's do the easy thing. This one, it just says, listen to the port 4000. That means that you can open the website. Yeah, I mean, this, nothing you need to care about, you know. What is really important about the server MJS file is this part. This part says, if someone goes on localhost 4000/generate image, let's do this, then this happens. So what happens? Well, now we are on that website and it's completely blank because, as I said, the server is running in the background. So there are no buttons. That's the whole idea. But we have that website, and when I send lion with a monkey in a city and I say generate image, then it sends lion with a monkey in a city, it sends it to this website, to the generate image. So basically, this thing is doing the connection. When we receive the data from the website coming in, it goes into here. This is also, you don't need to understand this completely. If you want to understand it, put it in ChatGPT, it explains you well, but it's completely fine to not 100% understand what's going on here. You just need to understand it receives the information. You know, there is a website called localhost 4000/generate image, and it gets data, and that data then it takes it here. That's called a prompt. It takes it, and then it puts it into a function called generate image, and this is actually the interesting thing. So the lion with the monkey in the city comes onto that website, onto that page, and then gets put into this function. And this function is this file. Basically, this function is in this file here. And you see, here is a lot of importing stuff going on. It's just how programming works. You need to import things, but those are no things which are of major concern now. And this is a function. Here, the whole thing, that's a function. And so, again, we are on the website. We are sending lion with a monkey in jungle. We're sending this to this thing, to the localhost 4000 generate image, which is this thing. So now this thing received line with a monkey in the jungle, it received it, and now it puts it into a function, which is in another file. I mean, the function could also be in the same file, but that's not good. It's good to split up code into different files. So the monkey, the line with the monkey in the jungle goes into that file here. So now here, actually, instead of prompt, we have this. It received line with the monkey in the jungle. That's everything what happened until now. So the server thing is kind of accepting whatever comes as input into the server, and it forwards it into that function which is in this file. Okay, good. So now I hope you understood that now we have a function which just received a line with a monkey in the jungle as a text. That's what happened. And it's in a variable called prompt. So actually, it's like this. It's a bit misleading. I could call it input prompt and input prompt. So maybe that's more clear. So there's a variable now called input prompt, which has the value a line with the monkey in the jungle. And this is written here. That's how variables work. Sorry if I'm boring some people, but that's just important. So we have a couple of things. We have a variable called it's like this. And this thing, this is, maybe you noticed, this URL is Stable Diffusion. This is our Stable Diffusion. But we're using Stable Diffusion via an API. So with this URL, you can read this URL in the documentation from Stable Diffusion. By the way, if you type in Stable Diffusion, also like this URL, docs, then you see all the API possibilities, including the one which we are using, text to image. You can open it and then you see how it works. So this thing is the Stable Diffusion path API functionality version 1. That's how it's just called. You see it here. So we have the Stable Diffusion, and at the end we add that thing, because what we want to do, we want to make a text to image. We can also do an image to image, or we can do a video, but now we want to do a text to image. So this is the path. With this path we can access the text to image functionality from Stable Diffusion. The path is not doing anything now, it's just in the URL. So we have a variable called URL, which is the path to the generation of images. Then, as you see here, I mean, in Stable Diffusion you have all those buttons, you know, you have the bip, and you have the height, you have all this, and this is this. So instead of opening Stable Diffusion, you know, and typing the thing in with the jungle and the lion, and changing the things yourself, we do it here. So the width is this is the height. We have 30 steps. We have this, the seed is 1, we can have seed -1, we can have seed 1000. Seed is just a random number. CFG scale is how much you want to stick to your prompt. Leave it to 7, that's completely fine. And now here we are using this model, that sampler, which generates us this image, but you can use a different sampler, the Euler A for example. It makes a different look, you know, but nothing too crazy. Experiment with it. So here I'm just saying we're using the Euler A, but I can also say we're using this one, but no, why not? You know? And of course, Stable Diffusion also needs the prompt. Here's the prompt. As I said, the prompt gets imported from the server, and the server receives it from everything what comes on the server URL, and the website, which I will explain in a bit, sends the prompt to the server. So basically we have already a lot. We have we have the door to Stable Diffusion, text to image generation, and we have a couple of parameters which we need to make an image. You can make more. You can look at the, you can do even more. There are other things you can change. All those things are those buttons and things, you know. But let's keep it simple. I just use those. And now it makes, well, this is the API magic. This is how an API call works. Don't worry too much about it. What it does, it sends to the URL, to that thing, it sends those parameters. Here's the URL, here's the parameters. How this function works, why there is written method, header, content type, body, all this is not important for you now to understand. You know, what is important? The URL, even that is not so important. Now you know it. What is actually more interesting is the parameters. It sends those parameters to Stable Diffusion in this thing. That's the thing. This. So it sends to Stable Diffusion all the settings, and then Stable Diffusion generates the image. If the response is okay, no, it's not okay, the thing means not okay. If there was an error, it said failed. If it's okay, it goes on. What's happening here? Don't worry too much about it. Stable Diffusion, so we send a monkey within the city and the line, we send this to Stable Diffusion. Stable Diffusion sends us back not the image, it sends us the image as a code, you know, as a long, because if you open an image in a browser, no, not in a browser, if you open an image in like this, the image looks like this, you know. So it sends us that code of the image. It doesn't send us the real image, it sends us the code of the image back. So we say, Stable Diffusion, I want a monkey, which is 1024 and 1024. And Stable Diffusion says, okay, here's your monkey, have fun. Here's a lot of code. So what happens here? Also, no need to freak out about it. It takes the response, you know, the answer from Stable Diffusion, it takes it and it translates it into an image. You know, it takes all the code which we get and it translates it into an image, and it gives the image a name, and it saves the image in the folder called images. And then there's some other things at the bottom which you don't need to take care about. And that's it. So that's what the server is doing. Server receives information, receives a prompt, receives basically a line with a monkey in the jungle. Sorry, I'm explaining it 1,000 times. It receives it. It puts it into the generate image function. The generate image function sends it to Stable Diffusion, which is this URL. It sends it not only as the prompt, but it only sends a couple of extra settings like the width and the height and the steps, and then it receives a long line of code, and here it translates this line of code into a real image, and the real image gets saved in the image folder. So I think I got it. Cool. This was the server side. Now we're looking at the client side. Client side is basically the website which we see here. That's not that complicated. We're using React. It's a programming language, JavaScript. I think we're even using Next. Next is React, but you can build more websites with it. Like React itself is like a language. You can build applications with it and websites, but Next is a bit more user-friendly to already use it more easily. Let's look into this client folder. Here's a file called tailwind config. You can completely ignore it. Tailwind config, Tailwind is a CSS tool, which is really cool. So that means that you can write CSS not with an extra CSS file, but you can, for example, write CSS like this. You see? That box is gray, that box is green. I just say background green 200, border red 400. See, now we have a red border, padding 4. See, that's Tailwind. So you don't have annoying CSS file anymore. You can just write it into your classes. But I was too quick. So you can ignore that file. Here's a README file, which you can also ignore. Here's just some information about React in general. Here's a post CSS config file, also ignore it. The package.json, I mean, we talked about this in the server. It's basically some information about the project and the dependencies, like Tailwind. Tailwind, for example, that's a program, and it downloads Tailwind. You know, you like when you download my tool, the client, the server, the whole thing. When you download it, it doesn't download Tailwind because maybe Tailwind gets updated, and so it downloads it here and it downloads other things as well. So nothing you need to take care about right now. And there is a package log. Again, you can ignore it. This file you can ignore. This file you can ignore. The git ignore you can ignore. This file is not important. That folder, the .next, is unimportant. This folder is not important for you. Here's a public folder which has two images. You know, it's just a logo and the public folder. You would put like your logo in here. You know, nothing important. You can also ignore it. So until now, in the client folder, nothing was important. But let's look at the source folder. And here are two folders: app, the favicon. That's just that thing which comes up here. It should come up. CSS file, which we don't need to change anything because we're using Tailwind, so you can ignore this as well. Until now. And here is a layout file. The layout file has the title of the page and the description. See here, title. And also here, this one you can ignore. Because the layout file, that's the file which gets, so let's say you open the website on localhost 3000. Then it makes an HTML document, it makes a body, and it puts in a page. So here you don't actually need to make anything. Here, That's the page. This is what you see. This is the page. This is the page. This is the page. This is the this could also be here, you know, that's the, but that's more the parent page. We don't need to touch it. Important is this. I mean, important to know is the layout file gets called and then it puts in our page. So this is the page. And in the page, it's empty. See, there's no code, there's only written image generator and image generator, but here is something that's our image generator. It imports the image generator. That's this file. Close everything again, I was too excited. So until now, we realize there's nothing really important. Here's a file, the component generate image. This is important. This is interesting. So what it does now, until now, you open the website, it opens the layout page, it links, it forwards to the page, and that page forwards to the image generator. This is what we see. This is where the magic happens. So let's start at the top. Use client just means clients are allowed to put in something, so that's good. Import React, because that's how React works, you need to write it. And now we have a function called image generator. This function gets called here. Here, that's how React works. You need to prompt. You need to, in React you need to define a variable which you maybe want to change in the future, and that's how you do it. The variable is called prompt. Prompt you might remember from the server. So prompt. Anyway, not so important. I think I start here. What is important? We have a div box, which is the overall div box. I mean, I can class name, background, red, 100. This is the div box. It's a big box, and I can write something in it. Image generator. Here. In the div box we have a form, and the form is basically just a form, like input form, like an email form or whatever. And we have a label. The label has no functionality. The label only says, hey, oops. Label only says, hey, enter a prompt for the image. Here. That's only what the label does. So nothing complicated. And the input, that's that gray box. So the input, let's have a look, is gray, 200. I can change it to yellow, whatever I want. Yellow, 400, bright yellow, dark yellow, light yellow, doesn't matter. It has an ID, so it's unique. It's called prompt. Maybe that's important later. I think it's not really important. Well, it's called ID. It accepts text. Important is the value. So when you put in something, tiger, then now I typed in tiger, so that prompt says tiger. Just, whatever you type in is in this variable. And it says on change, so whenever I change here something, it sets the variable called prompt with the new value. So whenever I change something in the input field, it changes the variable called prompt with whatever is written in the field. Logic. And it has a button. The button is green. It's a submit button. Yeah. And it's called generate image. So what happens? So as I explained, whenever I change something here in the input field, it changes this variable. So when I write tiger, this thing is called tiger. When I write line, this thing is called line. And now when I hit the button, it's a submit. So on submit, so when you hit submit, it calls a function called handle submit. Called be anything. Just important, it calls that function. And that function, this means do nothing first. Just take a moment, you know, because sometimes buttons do things automatically and in the internet, and that thing says do nothing, relax. And then it says open the website localhost 4000 generate image, which is this website, which is like invisible website. Open it and send whatever is in that variable to that website. So send tiger to that website. So that's what I do. It's written tiger. This is tiger. Now I write tiger in space. Now the variable is called tiger in space. It's here, it's inside. And when I hit generate image, then it sends the word tiger in space to my server. And before that I explained the server receives here the word tiger in space. It sends it to a function called generate image. The generate image function sends the word tiger with a couple of other settings to Stable Diffusion. Stable Diffusion sends us back long code which should be an image, and then we transform the image, it's a magic trick, to a tiger in space. So that's it. It's working. Yeah, cool. Well, I mean, of course you can style this different. You can add negative prompts. You can have all the settings, for example, the width and the height. You can also have this here, and also send this as a prompt. You know, this is the super, because right now we are only sending the prompt. We can have another input field where we say width, and then it receives the width, and then instead of changing the width here, we can change it right here. One important thing, whenever you make a change in the client on the website, it's immediate, you know, as you saw. This is the page. Cool. Huh? Immediate change. When you make a change in the server, like change that number, the change is not happening. You need to restart the server. You need to terminate the server and start it again. Only then it makes the change. So when and again, when you want to run the program which I just showed you, you go terminal server npm start npm run dev, and of course Stable Diffusion needs to be running with the web UI user. I think that's it. and I'm excited to see what you all come up with. Yes.